Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and today I've got a very special guest, the legendary John Gallagher from Raven. How are you, John?
I'm doing good, Peter. Thanks for having me. Great.
Absolutely. John and Raven will be touring Australia for a run of East Coast dates. I believe November the 7th, 8th, and 9th. So I thought it would be opportune to get John on the show to shoot the breeze about Raven and just tell us about what's happening in the world of the band. So, what can Australian audiences expect at this particular run of shows in November?
Uh, a lot of racket and a lot of running around, and we're the kind of band that it's like a three-ring circus. You've got the three of us going off. We, connect with the audience. The audience is a huge part of what we do. And unlike a great many bands these days, unfortunately, we grew up with bands with entertainers like Bon Scott and Alex Harvey and the Deep Purples and the Led Zeppelins and the Black Sabbaths, all that stuff. And these people, they came from a background and their generation, you had to go out there and put on a show. You didn't just stand there, make a noise and look at your feet. We don't do that. We have an awful lot of fun on stage, and I think it's infectious. It kind of, the energy goes out, it comes back, and at the end of the day, we all having a great night out. That's what
Yeah.
it's all about.
Is it hard to choose a song list before you go on tour? Because you guys have got 14 albums. Is it really tough to whittle down a selection of songs before you go on tour?
Yeah, you've kind of got your three categories. You've got your small number of songs which you're probably always going to play. So, for us, it's things like Hell Patrol, Rock Until You Drop, maybe On and On, stuff like that. Nothing's 100% sacred because at one point or another, they've all been cut out either due to us just wanting to do something different or time constraints. But there's those, the crown jewels. And then you've got stuff like, say, new songs. Okay, promoting a new album, you want to have your three, maybe four tops new songs, you know? And then after that, it's a little bit more up for grabs, where we'll say, well, we've got this pool of songs here, and maybe we'll mix them up from night to night, or, you know, maybe just for the tour, we'll turn around. Because the funny thing is with this band, since Mike joined back in 2017, we've never rehearsed.
Right.
Not long. We've never rehearsed. Uh, Basically, it's a case of like, Mike, do you fancy doing this song? Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, here's here's the song. Maybe one of us will even do a scratch track so you can play along rather than listen to the drums. You can just hear the music part, come up with his own things. Says, what do you think of this? This sounds great. And that's what we did for the tour we've been doing. We've been playing Inquisitor, which is a more obscure song off like the sessions for the first album. And, he did his take on it, and we've been having fun playing that since it's the band's 50th anniversary. So we
Yes.
said, okay, here's one of the first songs we ever wrote, one of the first we ever recorded, and boom, there you go. And
Yeah.
we've done that over the last 7 years quite often. Like, pick a song at random, let's do it. And we did the Wiped Out album in its entirety through 2022. And in 23, we did a tour where we did All for One in its entirety. And with each of those, there was at least two or three songs which had never been played live before. So that's always fun. It's a challenge, and it's, hey, let's try this. It's different. And that really shakes your set list up because, 80% of it is now going to be this album.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll have a few sort of maybe some deep cuts up your sleeve if if you feel like it on the night, maybe.
Yeah, we'll figure something out, absolutely. But one thing I can say that no matter what we play, it's going to blow your bloody head off.
Absolutely. So go back to 1974 when you formed the band with Mark. Did you expect that, 50 years later, you'd be still together and just rocking
Oh,
and
sure.
touring the
Yeah,
world?
people do that. They think ahead 50 years. I have great difficulty thinking ahead 5 minutes, never mind 50
Yeah,
years. No, we had no idea whatsoever. Uh, I think the seeds were planted from two different things. One was going on holiday to Spain as kids, and in the hotel, it was like the Monty Python thing where you go downstairs for your. If you're not down by 5:30, you'll miss your Campbell's cream of tomato soup, the first item of international cuisine. So we were down there, and when you finished eating, there was a band played. There was a five-piece band, and the guy had a Strat and the coiled cord and the fuzz and the wah wah and playing with his teeth, doing the whole Hendrix trip, which was like mind blowing for us. And it was, and we saw them twice, and we saw another band in town at some restaurant. That seemed to be the thing, these young rock bands, and it was like, wow, I'd love to do that. That
yeah.
that looks like fun. That looks like fun. And then the first show we ever went to was Slade in 1973, and the opening band was the sensational Alex Harvey band. So between the two of them, we were ruined for life,
Yes.
and the seeds were planted. And in '74, Mark and the kid from the next street, Paul Bowden, came up to me and said, "Hey, we're going to form a band. You can play the bass." And we already had one acoustic guitar that we were shunting around, and I was tuning it down already, trying to match bass lines. And we bothered our parents that Christmas for cheap electrics, and they were wise enough to say, "There you go. If you stick with it, you're on your own, because we can see the rabbit hole that everything is extraordinarily expensive and only gets worse the longer you go on." So we did that. We used to do things like there was tearing down houses, like about half a mile away, and we dig through and find these radiograms that people had left. And the amplifier was a tube or a valve amplifier. You could pull that out, take the wires from where the stylus was on the record player, and put a cord on it, and you could actually play through it. Those were our first amplifiers. And we had an uncle who lived a few streets away who had a TV repair shop, and he would, help us with wiring up. We'd buy speakers and build the cabinets, and he'd help us with that. And bit by bit, we'd get our stuff together, and we played our first show in December of 1975 at our school, which was, half originals, half covers. And at the end, we threw all the guitars around, much to the consternation of the teachers who were chaperoning all the kids there.
Was there any particular band that just blew you away that you think that really influenced your stagecraft? Because you guys are just wild on stage, and you always have been, like athletic rock, and you put on a great stage show. Was there anything in the glam era that sort of really, like whether it was Sweet or Slade or Alex Harvey,
They all, they all,
all of them?
all of them did. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we were sponges. We took a little bit from everybody. So we loved Slade, we loved Sweet. I mean, Divorce the Man from the Music, Gary Glitter, Mode, Status Quo, all those bands that were on Top of the Pops. you
yeah.
know, like this from like 71 to like 75, like amazing, right? So that came in, and then we found out there was a radio show on Fridays, the Friday Rock Show, and older people we knew, other brothers or sisters would go, "You need to check out this band. You need to check." And then records were borrowed. I remember us all sitting in a room putting on the first Black Sabbath album on this little tin box record player, and all being scared to death when it started. So all of this came in, and obviously, as far as the stagecraft thing, the first band we saw, like I said, was Slade with Alex Harvey opening, who both were amazing. And then in short shrift, we saw Budgie. And then we saw Status Quo. And then we saw, oh, geez, who would it be? Maybe Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. I camped out on the stairs of the City Hall in Newcastle in the snow all night to get tickets to see that. And you would just, I mean, that was our education. You'd watch, and especially you'd watch the opening bands because, you knew what was going on. They had to go out and get a response. And often they were awful. And you would think,
Mm,
you would go, why? Why did they do this? Or when they got a great reaction, note that, they did this, this was good. And it appeared that the ones that got a good reaction were the ones that actually tried to communicate with the audience. And the ones that just kind of like, hey, I'm very cool,
mm,
nobody cared about. But the bands that loved the audience, like a Uriah Heep, would come on and David Byron would grab the audience in the palm of his hand and never let them go. All of the band were smiling, they were having fun, they'd connect with the audience, and that love was going backwards and forwards. And that really made an impression.
yeah. When you guys started to gig towards the end of the 70s, you were supporting a lot of, dare I say, punk groups like the Stranglers. Do you think punk had any sort of influence on your sound or songcraft or the way that you may have related to the audience in any shape or form?
Very little. I mean, we already had the attitude, and we were already far better players than 90% of those guys. The only guys that could really play were the carpetbaggers, the Stranglers, the Police. There was no way they were punk bands. They were just like, oh, here's a wave, let's jump on with our surfboard and
Yeah.
see where we go with it, which is great. That's fine. And we loved those bands. They were great. The
Mm,
Pistols were a great rock band.
yes.
So we got all that, but we also got a lot of guys who were just jumping out three chords, making a noise, but the attitude and the energy was always a great thing. Uh, so yeah, we opened for the Stranglers. We opened for a band called the Motors. And
Yeah.
the funny thing with both of them is none of them would let us use the PA, which is unheard of. Unheard of. So we had to bring our own, epoxy little PA to set up, and we played these shows. And I remember a good one with the Stranglers. Hugh Cornwell, the guitar player and singer, who's left the band now, but he was one of the founder members, I guess. He walked past us and he goes, "Has anyone got perfect pitch?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Give me an A." So I go, he tunes the guitar up and walks on stage and started playing. Now they had a keyboard player. I'm like, "You're out of your mind."
Oh dear. Um, what triggered you guys starting to use, wear guards, helmets, plates? Was there any particular act or something that you sort of
Just
got that
kind of led
athletic
us,
rock
yeah.
sound sort of look?
Well, that term was put on the first single, and that's when we'd first heard of it. When we looked at the first single, when athletic rock by Neat, we're like, really? All
Right.
right, well, as long as you spell our name right, I don't care. Make
Yeah.
whatever. And basically at that time, people were dressing like Zeppelin and Rush. They all had their silk tops and their spandex trousers and whatever.
Mm,
And we kind of graduated more into they were like running tops just because they were bold. Your Mark would have black and white, I'd have white and red. Uh, I don't know if subconsciously we were trying to appeal to the Newcastle supporters and the Sunderland supporters. I don't know. I don't think so. But luckily, nobody beat us up over that. We had that, and we got these knee pads just basically to protect yourself when you were throwing yourself around on stage. And when we first went to the States, we went to Madison Square Garden, and there was a hockey shop there. And Mark and Rob are standing going, "Ooh, I could get those hockey pads." And Rob's going, "I could get that helmet." because he was forever sticking the nut on the cymbal and cutting his head. So
Yep.
it kind of made sense. And it just kind of developed from there.
So you signed with Neat Records in 1980 and you record Don't Need Your Money. Describe the experience of being in the studio for the very first time. What was it like?
Yeah, I mean, we'd been in a studio before, and it was very, very basic, like live to 4-track, pretty much.
Yep.
And those demos did come out like about a year and a half ago on the box set of Rock Until You Drop. I finally found a copy and put them on. So we had, a bare bones idea of what was going on. And initially, we went in and just did a live to 2-track thing, which was very similar to what we'd done. And those tracks are also on that box set. And then when we went in to do the single proper, there was very little difference other than we overdubbed the solo and the vocals. And on the B side, I remember due to lack of tracks, there's a little harmony run on Wiped Out, and me and Mark played the guitars together on the same track just to do the harmony thing, just to save tracks. But Neat Records, the studio was very basic. You basically, you had a room, you had the desk, you had the speakers, they had a reverb unit, and the tape machine, and that was it. I mean, they had an echo unit, that would appear, on, most songs. Nearly every band that had a song ended with bow, 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 bow. They'd always put that on as a joke, I think. So anything that was sound effect related, pretty much you had to create yourself, which was great because it made you be more creative. Like the producer when we did the album, Steve Thompson, who also was there for the single, he came up with the idea of, let's get all these plastic cups and put them in the stone bathroom and stamp on them to give the sound of a marching army. So the boss, David Wood, wasn't very happy when he found out we'd wasted like 1,500 plastic cups. But
Yeah.
that's the sound. That's the sound at the beginning of Rock Until You Drop. And we did have there was a set of BBC sound effects that we used for bombs and stuff on Tyrant of the Airways, I think.
Yeah. I want to talk about this album. First, I want to talk about this album cover. It's completely bonkers. Did you get out of this barely alive, or was there an occupational health and safety inspector
Well,
there? Because you look like you're struggling.
Yeah, that was the room where we kept our equipment. It was underground, and it was right in the centre of Newcastle. And it's all gone now. It's completely been concrete over, and there's like a 30-story skyscraper growing up on it right now, which is hard to believe. But had a big sliding door inside, and we'd pull the stuff out, and we'd rehearse in this horrible echoey room, and then all stone and
Yep.
metal beams and whatever, and put it back in. And I had the idea for the cover, so we meticulously built that. And then David Wood sent down a photographer, and this guy basically was a wedding photographer. So when he walked in and saw this, he was like, "What?" And then he got into it and had fun with it. And we did loads of different photos, but that was the photo, absolutely.
It certainly made an impact in the day. In respect to recording the album, were you a multiple take sort of band or once and done? Was it kind of really in and out recording?
We'd rarely go over 3, and then we'd go to another song and come back to it. Because we hated that. It takes the life out of it. Do it again, do it again, do it again, or just keep going until you get the drum track. And this put seeds in our head. Like by the time we got to the next album, and we had a engineer, Keith Nickel, who hadn't done much stuff before, so we were able to cajole and push a little bit. Said, like when you do a guitar solo and you drop us in to fix the bad part, can you drop the whole band in? We say, what? He says, well, just drop us in. So after a bit of experimentation, doing it at the right time with a cymbal hit, you could drop the band in. And that way we'd play, and if we like what we got, if we, train wrecked at the end, we like what we got, we just play along and then hit record and finish it. And that way you basically had a first take because we
Yeah.
weren't playing it 50 times. Why not? Why not? You'll never on a record, you'll almost never get a singer, okay, start and do the whole song. I mean, I've done takes where it's like, that's great, let's fix this, this, and this, and that's it. But quite often you'll do lines or you'll do a chorus and go, okay, listen back and get it right rather than, just burning yourself out over and over and over again. And that way you can be more creative because it's, live is performance art, studio is painting. And if you don't like a line, you get your brush and put another line on top of it, until you make the painting you want. So to a large degree, anything goes with that, as long as the end result sounds great. If it sounds fake and boring, then you need a new paint box.
Yeah. When you listen to this album, what do you think? Do you sort of get a good vibe about it? You have a lot of good memories about it, or do you not generally go back to your old albums and just
No,
look forward?
I had to listen to it quite a bit when we were putting the box set together. And one thing that really struck me is you can hear, because it was recorded over a period of maybe 7 or 8 months, you can hear the band change if you know the order in which the songs were recorded.
Yeah,
So the earlier songs, like Hell Patrol and Nobody's Hero, you'll hear Rob going, 16s on the hi-hat. And as it gets to like the Sweet medley and For the Future, you'll hear open hi-hat, banging, more drive, more groove.
yeah,
So
swing.
you hear him changing immediately and just playing tighter as a band, you know. So it's interesting hearing that little change there.
What do you think about some people that regard that as your greatest album? Do you sort of, what's your view on that?
I have no control on what people think. I just
Mm,
know that we caught lightning in a bottle when we did it.
yep,
The engineer and producer Steve Thompson and Mickey Sweeney, they thought it was hilarious that the talk in between, so they just let the tape run. They had a 2-track running and they'd capture all that, and we would just, some of them were with the songs, one or two were really funny, and we just popped them in afterwards. But a lot of them were, what the hell we got a gas fire in here for? And, here we are and here we go.
yeah.
Chad Valley Rat Time and all that stuff. So that was the thing we did on the first two, definitely.
I think it's quite inspired because you guys have got a good sense of humour, and you can sort of sense that you're a band of brothers at that particular time. And I think it adds to the flavour. There was a lot of heat with this album, and you started to tour asked to tour with Ozzy, Whitesnake, Iron Maiden. Was that just really surreal? This
Oh
band
yeah. I
just
mean,
puts out a single on Neat, and then you're starting to do these major tours.
literally 3 months before that, we were playing pubs and working men's clubs. And then, they play the single on the John Peel show. John Peel was a very influential DJ in the BBC. And his whole thing is he would just play new music. Didn't matter who it was. Just like, I didn't care if he liked it or didn't. It was just like, here's a new song. Boom, play it, see what you think. And Ozzy heard it and went, oh, I love that. I want those guys. I want them on. So we did like 4 dates with the Blizzard of Oz in 1980, which was, amazing, mind blowing. And the same thing happened. We played with, had a show with Iron Maiden down in London, Whitesnake, Gary Moore. had pulled out at the last minute. So we had, hey, everybody, Gary Moore can't be here tonight. Here's Raven. Boom. Yeah, waves of hate. But, like we said before, we played for punks who
Yes.
hated us. So that stuff is like water off our back. It's just a challenge to win
Yeah.
them over. And
Yeah.
that was fun. And Motorhead, we played with, and it was, like you said, quite surreal.
Yeah. Was
Um,
there a lot of camaraderie with the bands, or you just basically did your bit and then you didn't see the main acts? Was there any
the
interaction?
main acts in general were wonderful, and Ozzy and who was playing with Ozzy right there? Jeez, I was just reading a thing about the bass player and
Bob
Lee
Daisley,
Kerslake and Bob Daisley.
Lee Kerslake.
Wonderful, and Randy. Randy was very
Yeah.
quiet, very nice. They were super friendly. The crew were awful. The crew hated us passionately,
Yeah.
but the band loved us. They were really nice. Motorhead were always really nice to us. Iron Maiden were very friendly. The bands were always cool. I mean, everyone was
Supportive.
doing their thing. I mean, we were in a dressing room after we were playing with Whitesnake. It's like, next door, it's John Lord and Ian Pace. And the door opened and in they walked, and we were just like, we're not worthy. I mean, literally. And they were so wonderful, so down to earth, so friendly, so inspiring. I mean, it really got you to say, these guys are, it didn't get any bigger than that, and they're super, super normal. It was really, really cool to have happen to us.
Absolutely. So when you recorded Wiped Out, did you feel much more confident and comfortable in the studio? Like the wind behind your sails after, going out on tour with all these big acts? Did you feel that you were
Yeah, and I
more
mean,
confident?
we'd done a lot of stuff by then. We'd actually played overseas. We'd been to Italy. We'd done one or two tours in basically the Netherlands and Belgium. We
Mm,
played there and saw how the more intense songs got a more intense reaction, as it were. So we kind of just put our foot on the gas a little more when we did Wiped Out. The intention was a crazy album from start to finish, and we knew exactly what we wanted, and we did it very quickly. That
mm,
album and all the Crash Bang Wallop, the extra tracks, so it's the album plus the three extra tracks, was done and mixed in like 6 or 7 days. And three or four of the songs were written on the spot in the studio. Like we did To the Limit, To the Top. We played it right through to the middle where there's a breakdown and stopped and went, okay, where do we go from here? And took a break for a cup of tea and wrote
yep.
the rest of the song, and then boom, again, drop in, play through to the end, and did
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
very, very much in a great creative place for sure at that point.
Do you bring demos into the studio when you're recording, like Wiped Out or All for One? Or was it just you sort of the songs
We,
evolve within the studio?
we had, I mean, we'd been playing some of the songs, like Chainsaw was an older song that you can actually see it on the set list of the Rock Until You
Mm,
Drop. So there was one or two like that. Uh, and we'd been playing at least 5 or 6 of them live. So there was no need to refer to demos per se. We pretty much knew what we were doing, and obviously we rehearsed before we went in to record.
mm,
So we were pretty tight on that. But the concept of, that riff sounds good, let's run that down and boom, boom, boom. Okay, put us in record. And very spontaneous. That really appealed to us too, having something
mm,
fresh and right on the spur of the moment.
yeah. Is the band a democracy, or was it you're the band leader? Be honest
Uh,
here.
it's nearly always been a democracy, to be
Mm,
honest. There's always, you know, I mean, I think initially I didn't write quite as much. I think I've only got really two or three credits on the first one. I've got more as they go on,
Hmm.
more on the second one. But listening back then, because Rob plays guitar, and it's very difficult sometimes to figure out who came up with which riff.
Yeah, I often wondered because it was a three-way credit, and Rob, yeah,
Yeah, Rob
wrote
very
as well.
much
Yeah.
come up with guitar riffs, came up with a lot of lyrics too. I was surprised going back over the first two how many lyrics Mark had written. Uh, but definitely, everyone deserved the credit. It was, and even if somebody comes up with stuff, the other two would play with that and meld it and change stuff, and
Yep.
everyone had their 10 cents to put into it for sure.
Yeah. With the new wave of British heavy metal in full swing around Wiped Out, All for One, were there any major labels sniffing around wanting to sign you, or nothing
We
had sort
no,
of come to fruition yet?
no, they were, as they usually are, incredibly blinkheads and morons. They had their token, they had their token couple of bands, and that was it. They weren't interested. It wasn't exactly a huge feeding frenzy. Uh, and of course some of the labels who did sign some of these bands, like MCA, were useless. They had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of a band having like a great manager and getting a great label, and that's what made the difference with, like, say, somebody like an Iron Maiden as compared to somebody like a Raven or a Diamond Head. It's
Yeah.
got zero to do with the music and everything to do with the business.
The business side. You signed to Megaforce Records, and in 1983, that gave you a little bit of an injection in the arm, so to speak. What did you think of the relationship with that label, especially in the early years?
Well, basically, with Megaforce, they licensed All for One because we'd already been over and done a very short tour in the end of '82,
Mm,
which Johnny Z had put together, and just said, let's come back and do a proper headline tour next year, which turned out to be the Kill 'Em All for One tour. So he licensed All for One, and after we'd finished all that, the whole thing was like, we got to get away from Neat Records because they're not. We were spending half our life taking the bus down to where they were and sitting on the guy's front door, basically cajoling him. What's happening next? What's happening next? You got some gigs. We got this. We got that. Because they'd never answer the phone, and it was just, there was nothing happening, and we'd seen what was happening in the States, and it was just like, had the opportunity to do the tour. Yeah, let's do it. So we did that, and after that, it was like, we're breaking away totally. I still remember going to Neat Records where all our equipment was. Yeah, we got a gig on the weekend, and putting it all in there and going down to the Sunderland, the next town, where a good friend of ours who ran a music store said, yeah, you can store your gear for a month or two here. And we just took all the gear away, and then we ended up flying it all to America
so
later that
you,
year.
you felt like you escaped. You kind of were
Oh,
free,
very
liberated.
much so, very
Yeah,
much so. And that was, at that point, that was like early '84, and that was like we're going over to tour and get that major deal, get that major agency, and we're not stopping until we do. And it
yeah,
took all year, but we got it in the end.
absolutely. One thing before I talk about the signing with Atlantic, the legendary tour with Metallica. When you saw Metallica on stage, did you have any sort of twinkling that this is a band that could be on the rise, that they had something special?
Well, they were a gang like we were, so we all got on famously. But people have asked me this. Could you see that they would become what they? No, and that band didn't. It
Mm,
was the band that did Ride the Lightning that moved forward because that was a far more mature, wider ranging, and had some pointers as to where they could go. The first album was, Kill Your Mother, pretty much, Uh, not to denigrate it, it's the thrash album, but you could tell they wanted to be a lot more than that. But
yeah.
there's no way on God's green earth you would have thought that, you know, they'd be having Nothing Else Matters played at some lady's hairdressers or something, No, that wasn't going to happen.
How do you feel like being cited as being the pioneers of speed and thrash metal? The guys that actually set the template.
Well, it's always nice to be complimented, and like most things, it's partially true. There was a lot of people doing doing that. I mean, as far as the thrash speed thing, I think a lot of people have said it was probably Exodus were one of the first bands to really have that template. But we were certainly one of the first bands to rev it up, and the whole concept was to play faster, to have parts, interesting parts to break it up, but to have real songs. But don't bore people. Don't play a riff, 32 times in a row. Where we loved Sabbath, etc., but we weren't going to, just take a riff and beat it to death, as it were. We jump off, and where people would do it 8 times or 4 times, we do it three. Or just
Mm,
repeat it twice and get to the, don't bore us, get to the chorus, boom, boom, boom. There was a lot of that going on.
yeah, but Exodus were, that's in America, but you guys are in your own sort of bubble in the UK where you developed your own sound. That's why I think a lot of folk cite you as the pioneers because you were unique. There was nobody that was really like you, totally like you in the UK. Would that be a fair thing to say?
And still isn't.
Which is a
No, it's
positive.
it's
Yeah,
true. It's true. I
yeah,
mean that we had the three piece was definitely there wasn't many three pieces out and about, and for us that was the huge change in like it'd be like late 79, very early 80, go into a three piece, and all of a sudden, boom, we had all this real estate for each member to cover,
yep,
and you can't have any passengers in a three-piece band, and there's no safety net in a three-piece band. Everyone has to contribute, 100% to make it work. And we just thrived on that. It
yeah,
made us so much better musicians. We came up with great song ideas from that. And it really set us apart from that. And what was happening, I think, with a lot of bands that had the two guitar players is they weren't really utilizing them. It was just like, two guys playing the same thing, and then they'd take turns playing solo. There's very few doing, say, like the Pat Travers thing, where they'd, they'd be doing interlocking different parts that would, make a greater whole rather than playing the same thing. Uh, so we just came up with a totally different way of doing it, which was just very exciting for us to do that.
yeah. Well, certainly exciting for the listener. And that's why I asked you early in the show about whether there was any punk influence because you were certainly unique. And I would imagine that you would have had in those days, a little bit of a crossover of maybe punks or different folk, not the total headbanger going to your sort of shows because
Yeah, well, they got off on
the
the
fresh
energy.
element. Yeah.
I remember we played a show. It would had to be like 79. There was a punk band called the Angelic Upstarts who had a famous song about a guy getting killed by the police and all this. They were very, they kicked a pig's head around on stage and all this stuff. They had a crazy fan base. They cancelled the show, and all their fans came to our show, and we were like, "Oh, geez," and they loved it. You know, they
Yeah,
got into the energy of it just totally.
because it's not totally outside their wheelhouse. They love it. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's you can never fool an audience. They know when something's real.
yes,
They know when something's fake. They know when something's real. And that's always stood us in good stead for sure.
yeah. So after you Raven live at the Inferno, you signed with Atlantic. So can you explain how you signed to Atlantic?
Yeah, well, we did the. It was a big show. I think it was in August of '84. With we had Anthrax open, and then Metallica played. Then we played. We headlined in Roseland, like 3,500 capacity in New York City, three unsigned bands. So there was a lot of record company people there for that, and all three bands did get signed. Uh, Unfortunately, Atlantic, you think, oh, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, and you get to know that most record companies, they only have the great reputation or they got the great bands because of two or three key people. And it's not the organization. The organization as a whole, most people that could be, selling baked beans or, office paper. It doesn't matter to them. The scenes you've seen in Spinal Tap, where they go to the record company party and they meet like, was it Bobby Fluffkin? Yes, she is. Promotions girl. All them people. That
Mm,
absolutely 100% accurate. We got signed by a guy who was the disco guy because the rock guy was in rehab.
right.
So that was not a great start on that. And, we had the music together pretty much for Stay Hard. Stay Hard is pretty much the album we wanted to make. There wasn't a lot of record company interference at all. We kind of shot ourselves in the foot by not getting Michael Wagner in from the get-go. He came in basically to save the project. We were doing it with a live sound guy who's a phenomenal guy, but it just was sounding flat. So we got Michael in, re-recorded a couple of songs, and he did the mix. And the record company wanted a redo of Hard Ride. And we're like, all right, if that's the worst we have to put up with, we'll do that. And it was kind of a pointless remake, but we did it. And we didn't
Yeah,
have any bother with them until the next record. Very much a lot of pressure to be commercial.
yeah.
And,
We'll talk about that in a moment. This one, so Stay Hard.
Well, we had fun. We were in a studio in upstate New York in Ithaca,
Mhm.
Pyramid, and Alex Perialis, it's his studio. He was, you know, basically let Michael go crazy and do his Michael thing up there. And we had fun. We had this cool instrumental track, and we were joking around, going da, 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 da. And Alex is like, "I know his horn section. If you want horns, bring them in." And I thought that was brilliant. The bottom line is such a fun track because of that. We've got a great heavy guitar and these crazy horns on it. So that was different. We knew On and On was a great song and it was a pain to record. We tried so many different things. And then when Michael came on board, he pulled it all together and we made it happen.
Yeah,
And we just knew it had, it was just a great song. It was just very, very catchy, and it had lots of elements of what the band's about.
was there any influence by Atlantic on this album, or were you basically left to your own devices?
Only that they wanted Stay Hot as a Day Hard Ride re-recorded to put on it.
That's
That
it.
was it. We had no. No pressure whatsoever.
All right, well, I guess we've got to talk about this, 1986. Now, I'll give you a bit of a warning. I like this album, but this was my entry point to you because of my age, and it was, I bought it in 1986, and I wasn't really aware of the back catalogue of Raven. So sometimes entry points into bands are hard to give up. And I actually did a show on this channel defending The Pack is Back. So, but I'm fascinated by this album because to me, it doesn't sound like Raven. It sounds like a completely different band. You could call it another name.
I think a lot of the reasoning for that, one of the main reasons for that, is that Rob insisted on playing to a click track.
Right.
I want to play to a click track. I don't want to be put off by Mark playing guitar. And, with the benefit of age and hindsight, the greatest thing about the band is the push and pull, tempo-wise, especially back then, between Rob, who would play slightly behind the beat, and Mark would play slightly in front of the beat.
Yeah.
And they would be playing this game of catch-up all the time, incrementally, but it gives a sense of energy and danger and urgency, and that's completely void. And it only works on Rock Dogs and The Pack is Back, where they're slower, boom, boom, where you want it regimented, you want it through, and it works fine. The fast, or at least the medium pace stuff, tends to drag on this because of that. Nightmare Ride is okay, but again, we had a version of it that was great, and Eddie and Rob wanted to change the pre-chorus so it's a little more commercial, which isn't bad by any means. So I listen to it, and some of the songs are good, some of the songs not so good, some of the lyrics are very cheesy to me, but it showed that we have a lot of craft. But craft is not creativity or lightning in the bottle. Craft is, I built this wall, exactly, and all the bricks are perfect. It's not the artwork that went on the bricks afterwards by any means. And it was a long, painful process. We were in for about a month doing pre-production, about 6 weeks recording, and about 6 weeks mixing.
That's a long time in Raven speak, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it was like we learned a lot of things. One of the things we learned is we'll never take that long to do a record ever again because it's like annoying. It's crazy. Yeah. And you're getting things meticulously correct, and that's not what it's about. It's not being perfect. It's having the danger, having the, is it all going to fall apart at any minute, or where did that come from? And, the occasional squeaky noise where it's not supposed to be. And this was the record that taught us that after the fact. And the other thing that was really annoying about it is there was all this push, don't do this and do some extra tracks of clean guitar, so that, afterwards they could pull them up in the mix and make it sound a little more jingle jangle.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the record company wouldn't give us money to do a video.
That's ridiculous. I can't work that out. Why didn't they give you money to do a video?
We went to NFL Films, who had just done stuff with Gary Moore. They were the ones to pioneer having the camera on the guitar.
Mm.
Oh, we're going to do this thing where we'll throw the guitar up, and we'll do this, and we'll do this, and do that, and the other. No, sorry, we don't have the budget, not doing it.
So was all the budget thrown into the recording? Because it sounds like there's everything but the kitchen sink, a lot of double tracking and state-of-the-art sound. Did they just throw the budget into the recording and nothing left?
I wouldn't be surprised. It's kind of crazy. And it was crazy as well because you got a band like us that was, the live thing is very prevalent. And you get a
Yep.
producer like Eddie Kramer, whose thing is the live thing very much. Zeppelin,
Mm,
Kiss, Hendrix. And it's like, yeah, now go do a Def Leppard record. It's like, what? So looking back at it, it's all very, you're
yeah.
a plumber. Great. We're going to have you do woodwork now.
So the Eddie Kramer experience wasn't the experience you were expecting on this album.
Uh, a lot of this is our naivety. I mean, we
Mm,
had no problem with being commercial per se, because it is a large part of what we do and always has been and always will be. But it's not, when it's too much of what we do, then you end up with a different animal.
yeah.
It's got to be tempered with that chaos and, the crazy factor. So you got the songwriting, which is, on the logical side, and then you got the craziness. You got to balance these things out, and
Yeah.
that's the recipe for our particular cake. And again, hindsight, looking back, going, yeah, too much emphasis was put on this, to the point where, Mike, our drummer now, is like, I'd love to redo some of those songs just for the
Well,
hell of it.
that
And
was a
it,
question I was going
and
to
we
raise with
probably
you.
will. We probably will at some point.
So you might do the Packers Back rebooted. I'd
Yeah,
love to hear that.
that might be fun to do. That might be fun to do. At this point, we're so far away from it. Whatever you do, it's going to be totally different, and
Yeah.
it should be. It should be. What is the point of? There's a lot of bands of, we're going to re-record. I think Journey redid Escape and Frontiers, and they're indistinguishable almost from the originals.
Mm,
They
this would
they
be
did
different.
that for the royalties. So it sounds
Mm,
the same.
yeah.
They get the performance rights on that. At our
Mm.
point, we'd do it and we'd make it different.
No, I'd definitely pay to get that record.
And that's great because what you've done stands as itself, and then you do a different version because
Mm,
the music should always be a living thing. It's like when you play these songs live, we play them live. They're very different in many ways from the way they were originally played, but they
mm,
still holds the template and the spirits of what they're supposed to be.
yeah.
And that's what playing live's all about, putting that little bit of improvisation and keeping it fresh. You're not just, I'm going to dole out the same guitar solo I've been playing for 42 years, something like that. That does nobody any good, I think.
Is there, like with the Packers Back, do you think there is a good album somewhere? Like, were there like demos, or was there like outtakes where it's all stripped back and a different sounding album somewhere in the vault?
It just feels different, I think. There was a couple of songs that were just miserably, horribly commercial and awful and
Mm,
horrible. And it was just like, no, we're not going there. That was a bridge too far.
yeah,
Bit too silly. There's the one that's like a silly rock and roll thing, which is just nasty.
yeah,
It's like, no, but again, we always wrote a lot of songs and then
yeah,
whittled it down to the ones we wanted. Uh,
absolutely.
so it'd be interesting to revisit some of that stuff, I think. But and we did play some of it live. We played the Packers Back live, which was cool. We did Youngblood, which was great. It
Did
was
you
a
ever
lot
do
of fun.
Hyperactive? That's one of my favorite songs. I
Never
don't know.
played Hyperactive live. No,
Yeah,
that's an interesting song. Yeah.
yeah, with the
And there was
horn
always
section,
talk
that
of,
kind of works a little bit for me. I don't know.
I mean, it's lots of bands did the same thing we did. I mean, stylistically and career track, it's
Mm,
Turbo by Judas Priest all the way.
mm,
Even down to the same damn guitar synthesizer sound on "Give Me Some Love" and Turbo. It's exactly the same sound.
yep.
Oh, that sounds great. And, it's like 1967. Hey, I got a wah-wah. Everyone had a wah-wah.
So, Life's a Bitch, 1987, you went back to a return to a heavier sound. So, was this a reaction, a deliberate reaction to the Packers back, just to put the middle finger up and, this is
Yeah, well,
Raven?
we'd had a little intermediate uh, event with that where I think the last straw was the you're not getting a video. I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, that's great. And what do we do? I remember we had this big meeting and we said, screw these guys, we want to do an EP and it'll be transitional before we do a new album. So we did the Mad EP, which has some great songs on it, and that gave us something to tour on. So we will go out with Twisted Sister, who'd done their own Albatross album of Come Out and Play, which came out, and about 4 days before the tour started, they cancelled the whole tour. We'd already paid for tour buses and everything, so it was a complete disaster, nightmare. So we went out and did a headline club tour around the States at that point. And that was another factor that really kind of hurt us. When we got the Atlantic deal, we also got an agency deal with Premier Talent, with Frank Barcelona, who did The Who and did Journey and did Judas Priest. But unlike the other agent that wanted us, ICM, who had all the other metal bands, and when we went with them, they were like, well, we, we don't want you touring with our bands. So we could either go out by ourselves or we ended up doing a short run with Judas Priest. So we basically had to tell those guys, you're great, you're the best, but we got to leave you because we can't tour with anybody. And then when we did Life's a Bitch, we got on with ICM and toured with Wasp and Slayer at that point. But after we did Mad, which got well received, we went in and did Life's a Bitch. But yeah, both of them were totally a reaction against Atlantic, and the lyrics are not very subtle about that for sure.
And still no video.
No, there was absolutely nothing on that. I mean, we had a slightly reduced budget, and we did it at the same studio. We weren't paying an Eddie Kramer, but it was still. We went to Bearsville for 2, 3 weeks to
Mm,
write and rehearse, and then I think we did the album maybe 2, 3 weeks as well.
mm.
And then we went out with Wasp and Slayer, which was interesting because the Slayer fans, especially then, were completely mental. So all these, specky 14-year-old kids throwing 9-volt batteries at you and stuff. So we had this song called Overload, was the opening song. We'd stop, there was a gap, we'd stop, just throw our guitars down, and I'd climb over the barrier, and I'd be standing on the barrier going, all right, who's first? I'll fight every one of you little fuckers, one at a time. Come on. And they just looked like, huh? And Mark's like, come on. And Rob's like, yeah. And we're like, you done? Can we play now? And we'd go back and play the rest of the set and not get bothered anymore. But we had to do things like that just to show them who was boss, as it were.
So Rob Wacko Hunter leaves the band. Do you think all the sort of mishaps and things that were happening, that was just all too much for him and that's why he left the band, or were there other reasons?
Well, we actually, when he left, it was 30, how many years ago now? 35. We met up with Rob earlier this year for the first time since then,
Wow.
which was incredible. We sat down. He came to a show we were doing in New Orleans because
Yep.
he's working with Branford Marsalis and he was setting up the equipment for a live recording. And he came and we sat down for 2 hours and just shot the breeze, and it was awesome. It was really great to reconnect after all that time. But pretty much at that point, he was married, he had a kid on the way, he was getting a little too crazy with the rock and roll
Life.
substances and stuff,
Yep.
and he just saw where it was going, and he just said, "I'm out." And you know, being younger, he didn't handle it too well. We didn't handle it too well. He told the roadie to tell the manager to tell us. We got it like, fourth hand or whatever. But he did what he had to do, and he's always been an incredibly talented guy. So he ended up being a studio guy and learning the ropes on that, and has worked exclusively with Branford Marsalis for many years now. And, fantastic engineer.
Would you ever rule out a one-off reunion, the three?
Oh,
Fabulous
I
three
think
pack?
I think he'd run to the hills from that. It's been a while since he'd played drums at that kind of level. Uh,
Not match
but
fit.
it was really great reconnecting. That's for sure. And I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
we send each other ridiculous jokes and stuff on the internet all the time. So it had been like maybe 3 or 4 years. There was a gap where we hadn't been in touch at all. And there was some business thing came up where I had to get in touch with him. And at that point, we were on the phone for 2 hours, and everything's been cool ever since. It's just we've never ran into each other.
So from this, you've had some serious kick-ass drummers such as Joe Hasselvander and now Mike Heller. What do they add to the sonics of this band that maybe you previously didn't have?
Well, Joe is a very precise, very solid drummer. And even though he would never see it, he's very John Bonham-y. Because, I mean, his thing comes from that Bill Ward, John Bonham on one side, and then the Billy Cobhams. Because when he was a kid, he played in a Mahavishnu cover band, which is, no small feat for sure, trying to do Billy Cobham. Uh, and he was a friend. We'd been staying at the same house we were when he was playing in another band. And we knew he had the same influences. He loved all the glam stuff. He loved Judas Priest, Sabbath, all that stuff. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And he plays guitar and writes songs. So boom. So that worked out really well for us. And it was a long struggle because we still had all the backlash from the Packers back and what have you, combined with grunge and new metal and all that nonsense. So we still worked. We what did we do? We did Nothing Exceeds Like Excess in '88 and toured with Testament. And that was done on a shoestring budget, but there's great songs on it and great playing. And following that, we toured with Creator in Europe. It was our first time back in Europe in about 6 years or something. So that was really good for us. And from that, we ended up working with Creator's management, and we did a record over there, Architect of Fear, which was, better budget, better sounding, a really big, heavy record, and that did very well for us over there. We toured with Running Wild, played a lot of the big halls. It was a really, really good time for us. And of course, the grunge, new metal nonsense started to permeate its way into Europe right after that. And we got interest from Japan. So we did a record for Japan and ended up touring Japan. Which was the Glow record, and then we had the live album Destroy All Monsters back then. And, again, bucket list things, who thought we'd go to Japan? And it was unbelievable. We had such a great time doing that. And following that, what happened then? Things started to get a little better. We got an offer and we did a tour headlining with Hammerfall. It was their first tour. So there's another great band to add to the list with Metallica and Anthrax that we've given the first tours to. And Tank were on there as well. So that was an awesome tour. And just like the one we've just done, like 45, 50 degrees with no air conditioning. Wonderful. Hey, I can still smell it from here.
Your
And
last album, All Hell's Breaking Loose, great album, 2023. Are you going to be going to the studio anytime soon? Because yeah, the last album was an absolute corker.
yeah, we're writing. I'm always
Mhm.
writing. Always got some cool ideas. I start bouncing them off the guys, and my brother's been coming up with some good stuff. Uh, we probably would be in earlier, but Mike's moved from Los Angeles to San Antonio in Texas, and he's in the process of building a new studio. So once that new studio's done, then we can get stuck in. But he's building the pyramids at the moment, so and then he has to move his old pyramid from Los Angeles all the way over, all the equipment once the building itself is done.
Yeah.
So that's just giving us time. We'll just use it to write more and play out more. We'll play out more for sure.
Do you think it'll be in a similar direction to All Hell's Breaking Loose, or you got something, maybe exploring something a little bit different?
Well, we've got, I can't tell you too much about it, but there is something that'll be coming out a little, and hopefully at the end of the year, maybe at the beginning of next year, which that's basically all I'm going to tell you because I'm not allowed to. There's also
Okay.
a couple of cover things coming out. There's a cover album about a very well-known band that we've done a track on, which is both excellent and hilarious at the same time because we put a bit of humor into it. And I can tell you there's a Christmas song on a Christmas album going to come out. And
Very
that's not
good.
a carol, it's a rock song and it's a good one. And we had fun doing that. So we got all that stuff as a bit of a buffer, you know,
Yeah.
while we start working on the next one. But I think we put our flag in the ground when we did Walk Through Fire and said, okay, this is, you know, first step, bump. And we incrementally got better on Extermination, and we got a lot better on Metal City, and we kicked it up again on All Hell's Breaking Loose, and we shall do the same thing. So it's going to be more of the same, but we're going to be pushing that envelope even more, you know.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring the faster end of stuff, and we're going to be exploring the heavier end of stuff as well, while keeping, you know, the melodies and the songs, because that's what's really crazy about some of the stuff on All Hell's Breaking Loose. It's got songs that are like completely off the wall with very strong vocal melodies and structure. Like I'm trying to remember the name of the damn song. I'll have to sing the whole thing to get to it. And
You
I
guys
can't.
have,
But I
yeah.
mean that was basically the concept where that was. The last two have been 10 songs, 35, 40 minutes long. Don't
Mm.
overstay your welcome. All killer, all filler. No filler whatsoever. Boom, boom, boom.
But it
And
all,
we've
the last album sounded very live. It was just sort of like bang, just went into, just one a couple of takes and just motor through.
which it's not. It's very much a modern creation, but
Mm.
we're using technology rather than having the technology using us.
You use
So the
us.
drums are all completely real. There's no
Mm.
samples, there's no triggers
Yep.
whatsoever.
Mm.
Completely real. Uh, what we do is we'll write a song, we'll tear it apart, rebuild it, get it exactly within 90% of where we want it, and then do like a rough demo with guitar to a click track, And then Mike will take that and go, okay, so they're starting here, and you would normally slow down a bit here and speed up a bit here and slow down a bit and speed up and slow down, speed. And it's like 30, 40 time changes. And that gives that real feel. And then he can go in and go, okay, I'm playing this. I want this fill. I don't like that one. What do you guys think? Too busy. Do something more signature, or vice versa. Do something crazy. Play longer. Da, 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 da,
Mm.
da, da. So he writes a part. It's all spontaneous, but he builds it as opposed to old school where it was like, just get through the track and the drums or whatever they are. This way, he's being creative, just like a guitar player or bass player or singer would do, where it's just like, I don't like that, let's redo that and make it right. So he does his thing, and then we listen to it and go, you know what? If we took this bit out, it would be so much better. Or why don't I've come up with this new part? So it's still getting turned around, and then we'll get that together. And then we all went to Mike's studio, and then we did the guitars, and then we did the bass, because we always do the guitars first, because the bass is what glues the guitar and the drums together. And I then have the chance of going, oh, I can play a harmony to that, or I can react to what both of them are doing, which gives the bass that role. Where in a lot of bands, it's just like play the bass to the drums, and then the guitar goes on top, and it kills that interaction, you know. So we do that, and then we do the vocals, and then any, sound effecty, crazy stuff, and then we'll listen and go, are we where we want to be? And the ridiculous thing is, it has that crazy live feel because of the way me and Mark are playing. We try to be precise, but every now and again we'll just go off, and there'll be crazy noises or notes that aren't supposed to be there, and that's the magic. That's what it's all about. It's not just about going dugga 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 for 5 minutes,
Does Mark constantly surprise you with stuff? Like when you're on
Oh,
stage, we come up with
he's one
something
of
and you
those
go,
guys.
What did you do?"
Yeah, all the time. He's one of those guys. I mean, I'd put him in there with like a Jimmy Page or a Joe Perry. He's one of these guys that's got lightning in a bottle. Every
Mm.
time he plays, he'll get something different. And he his playing's very much a manifest of his personality. He'll make those crazy faces and the sounds that match, which
Yeah.
is just absolutely crackers. And that's another thing we'll be pushing more for when we're doing. We did a lot more of it in this record because he felt like he was being a little more, safe on one or two of the earlier records. He did a lot more crazy on the last one. We'll be pushing for more of that on the next one.
Yeah. I was watching on YouTube the show that you did for Johnny and Marsha Zazula 2022, and you were introduced by Metallica. And just seeing the enjoyment you guys had on a big stage, because I think you guys just love the big stage because of the space. Can you describe that night? Was that fun? Because it just seemed like a ball of fun.
It was really special. We had a long drive from Atlanta. It was like 650 mile, and we set off real early, drove all night, got there, and their crew are phenomenal. They're so friendly, got us in there. And the guys were amazing. We spent a lot of time with Metallica that day, and it was so funny. We see the stage, and they've got all the ramps and the cases, and the tour manager's like, I've spent 15 years getting them to get rid of all that stuff, and for this one show, they bring it all out. But that really matched with the theme, with the old school thing, doing the early albums, and they had a multimedia with showing all the old posters and tickets and old photographs. It was really well done. And what was funny was, I don't think it's. I mean, I've got a video of the whole thing, and you can see it. It might be on one of them. James and Lars introduce us. Here's Raven, da-da. And then there's nothing for 58 seconds because Mark's guitar's not working.
Yes,
And
I
that was
saw
the
that. Yeah.
longest 58 seconds of our lives. We're just like, oh no. And then boom, it came on and everything was fine.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But it was just
But
so great
yeah,
seeing
it
you
was great.
guys just inhabit that big stage. Just yeah, it was great.
Yeah, we love doing that. And it's a slightly different animal because again, there's just the two of us out there trying to fill it up.
Mm,
But we just did Wacken and we did Alcatraz in Belgium, and yeah, we got that down. It's fun to
yeah.
do.
The Wacko crowds they just love the metal, don't they? They really eat it up, don't they? Bands like
They
you.
do. They were great. So was the Alcatraz one too. It was just. I mean, and these are people that are out there. It's great because you've got the old guard, people that have been into it since day one, and you've
Mm,
got their kids, and now you're getting their kids. So you got like
cross
three
generational.
generations. Absolutely. And these young people are just so into it. They know all the words, they know all the albums, they know all the songs. It's just really, really cool.
So my final question is that is there any bands that you can see, any modern metal bands or hard rock bands that you can sort of recognise? That reminds me of us. Any of the current guard that you think are, they're
There's
not
a
bad.
few. I mean, our friends Night Demon, or there's a little bit of us in what they do. They very much took a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal into what they do. And there's a few other bands out there doing that too. I think a couple of the Swedish bands, like Wolf. There's another band from California called Haunt, where the guitar player and singer Trevor is actually the son of Bill Church from Montreux. So he's got pedigree, which is good. But there are some young bands out there who are they're taking that spirit and doing it their own way. You know, by no means are they clones, but they're taking that spirit, taking the good stuff out of it, I think. And that's good because we need more new bands.
Yeah,
A lot of the older bands are starting to fold. You just saw Aerosmith finally threw in the towel there, and I don't think we'll be seeing a great deal more of AC/DC at this point. I don't think. Uh, and there's a few of the others, so you know,
yeah,
give it 10 years, I doubt many of the big bands will be around,
yeah.
which is hard to think of. It's crazy times. And in the past, there was always a zillion great bands. Now there's just a zillion crap bands, and we need the cream to rise and come out here and start doing stuff.
Absolutely. Paul McCartney said that he's going to continue to play until he drops dead. Is that going to be the same for you guys? Are you just going to
Oh yeah,
continue to play until you're
and
dead?
then play until you either can't play anymore or
Mm,
you don't enjoy it anymore. And I don't see us not enjoying what we do. And for us right now, we are at the top of our game. Never played better, never sung better, never performed better. Uh, which is ridiculous to think because of the age we are. But touch wood, we're in for the long haul.
absolutely. Well, John Gallagher, it's been a fantastic chat. I've really enjoyed chatting with you and just going over the history of Raven and really looking forward to seeing you guys play Australia. So the 7th, 8th and 9th of November, the east coast of Australia, and lots more happening in Raven, whatever it is, with the 50th
Absolutely. We get to
anniversary.
go. We get to go to South America next month. We're doing like 12 dates there,
Big
which
crowds
is
in South America.
yeah. Oh, they're nuts. They're crazy. They really
Mm,
are. They're super passionate. So that'll be a lot of fun. And before we do Australia, we're playing Singapore for the first time. And then we are trying to get it together to go to Japan right after Australia. So that'll be great too.
No worries. Well, once again, thank you very much, John. And rock Daydream Nation. Cheers.
Thank you, sir. And we'll see you then.